We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown. Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Buckeye Breakdown on Wednesday, August 31st. We are just 3 days away from Ohio State taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in the season opener. And we've got you covered wall to wall on Buckeyes Now on Sports Illustrated, also on our social media channels, Buckeyes Now SI, and of course, all this video content on our YouTube channel. We would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and support the channel and our continued growth there. You can watch these podcasts mostly live. We'll continue to have live podcasts most mornings here throughout the course of the year. If they're not live, they'll certainly be posted early in the day. And you can also find the audio version wherever you like to listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm Brendan Gulick, along with Craig Hyson. Craig, the Notre Dame game is creeping up, and it's like every time you go to bed, you know you're waking up, you're one day closer, and you kind of get those butterflies going. You know the game is really, really important, and it's almost here. Are you talking yourself into feeling better or worse about the game just because we're in that mode in game week where it's right around the corner here?
Yeah, like you said, Brendan, right there. I think this morning when I woke up, I said that to myself, like, hey, we're one day closer, because it does feel like Christmas morning coming up, opening up with an opponent like Notre Dame. It's not your typical first game for Ohio State where you're opening up with a Toledo or a OU. No knock on those teams, but obviously not the same feeling going into play a top 5 opponent. So I don't know if I feel better or worse today. I caught a little bit of Marcus Freeman's show, see what he's got going on last night with his name's slipping my mind right now, Greg McElroy. Watched a little bit of that. So see what their thoughts are going into Saturday. It sounds like he's excited. I still can't believe he has no emotion on coming back to where he played for
come on, man.
4 years. But I know he's been back before as a coach with Cincinnati, and I think was it Purdue. But I find that hard to believe.
That. Yeah, I don't believe it. I mean, he's got to say what he needs to say because he's the head coach of one of the most prestigious teams in the country, and I respect him for having his guys back. He should, but to say that he's emotionless, I don't take it as a slight as much as I just don't believe it.
Right.
And in addition to coming back to playing in that building where he was part of several really good teams, he played in a couple national championships. And beyond that, we're going to talk about a little bit about the 2002 team on the show today. They're recognizing the 20th anniversary of the team that kind of reinvigorated Ohio State football. For a coach that Freeman played for and talks so highly of, and Coach Tressel. Come on, man, you're not emotionless. Right. There's no way. I'm not buying it.
Especially when Jim Tressel's going to be there Saturday. Like, you see your coach, it's got to bring back all those memories he had. So, yeah, to have no emotion it was a surprising comment. Didn't take it as a slight to Ohio State at all, but just kind of coach speak for his team, probably.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think about I've had these thoughts the last couple of days, sort of where I stand. I still don't have a final score prediction, but I'll come up with something. But the line is still right around 17.5. The over-under is right around 58. As it's gone along, those figures, I've almost felt them more than I have tried to justify why. On one hand, we've said this several times, Ohio State's going to go as far as the defense takes it this year. And knowing what you have on this offense, if the defense is actually fixed, like we have every indication from Ryan Day, from Jim Knowles, from all the players. I mean, look, talk is cheap. You got to go do it. But everybody seems to be talking really highly about the way this defense is playing. If that's fixed, look out. I mean, and I think everybody in the country knows that. Like, there are exceptionally few teams who you think could beat the Buckeyes if this defense is fixed. All year last year, everybody said, we got to find a way to have an Ohio State Georgia national title game because we want to see that offense against that defense, right? I don't know if it is. I'd like to think it is. Everything we're hearing about it, it is. Again, talk is cheap. You got to go prove it. But if the defense is fixed, maybe 17.5 against Notre Dame is too little. I just feel like that's a really steep line against a top 5 team in the country. It just feels funky to me.
Yeah, I don't know if the line says more about Ohio State or Notre Dame, but to me, for a top 5 matchup, it is awfully high. Brennan, what to you with the defense being fixed? What's that look like in your eyes?
I want to see
Giving
guys
up 20 a game compared to last year.
Yeah, to me, it's less about the stats and more about the eye test. I want to see the silver bullet defense flying around, looking like they did under Jeff Hafley and Greg Madison. I want to see the defense of 2019, where that was just as much appointment viewing as Ohio State's offense was last year. It's kind of what Ryan Day has talked about all year long. It's the toughness, it's the competitive stamina where you're just as good in the fourth quarter as you were in the first quarter. I think they have the guys to do it. I don't think this team is soft, and I think they've taken to heart in the offseason what that criticism had been of them over the last 12 months now or 10 months now. College football is an offensive game. So I especially now, even more so than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, because you've got athletes on the offensive side of the ball that are just freakishly good. So I don't know if I sit here and say that if the Buckeyes give up more than 20 points a game, then they had a bad year. I don't, to me, that's not what it's all about. It's how good are you when it matters? And last year they were really good when it didn't totally matter. They beat up on Michigan State, who had a terrible showing. They beat up on Akron and Tulsa. They certainly played well in consecutive weeks in basically early to mid-October, but they certainly didn't play well enough early in the year against Oregon when they were trying to figure it out, and Michigan ran the ball right down their throats. So to me, that's where I'm looking at it to say, okay, our team's running the ball straight downhill at you, and you're not getting a hand on a guy for 2.5 or 3 yards because their line of scrimmage is pushing you around. That's where I will watch first and foremost and say, okay, are we fixing the problem we had the last couple of years?
I'm right there with you. It's one of those things that, especially in these marquee games, can they get off the field when they need to get off the field? Last year against Michigan, you could feel the momentum coming back. They never got off the field when they needed to. So in those crucial moments, like you said, are they going to be able to get off the field this year?
I'm excited. I can't wait. I think there's a lot of people that are anxiously waiting for Saturday night to get here, and certainly there's going to be a lot of you start to think bigger picture about what this game means and how many balls are on this game. It's probably the hottest ticket in college football this year outside of a conference championship game. Maybe the Alabama-Texas game, in this conversation, but I know they down south, the saying is it just means more. I don't the Midwest is where football was created, and the passion, the 3 big schools in the Midwest, Notre Dame, Michigan, and Ohio State. It's as good as it is anywhere, and the football is often as tough as it is anywhere. And the hope is that would be showcased here this year. You've certainly got all 3 of those schools, in the top, top 6 in the early AP poll. That's great for football in this region. I'm trying to think through the ramifications of what this weekend's game really means. This is a loaded recruiting weekend. We touched on that on yesterday's podcast. You're going to honor the memory of the 2002 national championship, and you're talking about a team. Sorry, I've got a lawnmower outside my window here. It'll go away in a second. You're going to honor the memory of a national championship team that, in my mind, kind of like reinvigorated Ohio State football. I mean, I'm not that old. I was born in 1991. So my earliest memories of Ohio State football when they first got good are associated with that team. I mean, I watched the Buckeyes before them, but that was the team growing up in Cleveland when the Browns were irrelevant, when they were even, still in Cleveland. The Cavs were certainly not part of the conversation pre-LeBron. It was the Cleveland Indians that weren't just good in the 90s. They were unbelievable. They walked on water. It was a baseball town for a short while there. But like my football dose came on Saturdays watching the Buckeyes. And in 2002, that team like totally ignited my love for Ohio State football. And you think about, okay, that's 20 years ago now. And you've got a group of guys that are playing in this game that literally grew up only knowing success for Ohio State, for the guys that were in this region, because now it's a national footprint. You got guys from all over the country, and you're going to continue to have recruits from all over the country because of the way the game has evolved. I don't want to say something reckless, but like there's a big piece of me that feels like the future of the program has a major stake in the outcome on Saturday.
You hit on it. There's more kids at this game probably than have ever been at a Ohio State game. A lot of those kids are uncommitted. They got to build that 24 class up, and a lot of those kids are going to be there Saturday. So obviously none of them were born when Ohio State won that national title in 2002, but they're going to get to meet those guys, I'm sure, down on the field or maybe in the locker room or something. They'll get to meet Craig Krenzel. I don't know who all is going to be there. I saw he was going to be there, and Tressel's going to be there. I don't know if Chris Gamble's going to be there, but that was my favorite player growing up. And like you hit on, we weren't fortunate to grow up in good NFL towns. I grew up in Cincinnati, so Bengals stunk. So my football was on Saturday as well. And you look forward to every Ohio State game. That's probably why now I'm more into Ohio State than I am college or NFL. But yeah, that 0-2 season was special. There was a lot of close games. I was going back, kind of looking. I know we were going to talk about this today. Just kind of looking. I remember a lot of those games. I was at the Cincinnati game at Paul Brown, and Cincinnati fans will tell you they should have won that game, but they didn't. And there was a call at the end of the game. I can't remember if it was pass interference or a holding call that went against the Bearcats and gave the Buckeyes the ultimate victory. I think Chris Gamble picked one off in the corner of the end zone. We were sitting in to seal that. But you go on that schedule, there was every Saturday was near heart attack for Ohio State fans.
And that's the cool part of it, Craig, is like that team never got flustered. It's not like they were steamrolling teams, right? I mean, they found a way to just win close. I mean, didn't they go to overtime against Illinois? Like I
think it was Illinois. They went to overtime, and that one was looking really unlikely for a while.
And they certainly didn't look good in the Holy Buckeye game late.
No.
And that turns into one of the most famous Ohio State wins of all time. To me, the lasting memory, aside from Holy Buckeye, because I think that almost stands on its own, there are two things that stand out to me when thinking about that Ohio State team, and they're actually both tied to the national championship game. I guess it's three things. I mean, I remember the incomplete pass and then the flag thrown. Everybody is kind of like, did that really just happen? Did we lose or not lose, or what's the deal here? To me, the most memorable play from that game was actually when Maurice Clarett fumbled and kept his head in the play and then stripped the ball back and kept possession. That was like my introduction to, you never give up on a play, and it doesn't matter what position you are on the field. You can find a way to make an impact no matter what's going on. I was so unbelievably impressed that a running back who had just fumbled in the national championship game, I'm an 11-year-old kid in 2002, and he went and stripped the ball back. Like, I will never forget that play as long as I live. And it was a huge momentum swing back for the Buckeyes at a moment where, as a fan, you wanted to throw a remote through the TV because you couldn't believe you just fumbled. But it's funny, the things that like stick with you long term. I remember watching the end of the game with my dad, and the overhand double high five that we gave each other. Craig, my hand stung for 2 days. I've never fived somebody harder than I did when we won that, like literally like, ow, but this is awesome.
Yeah. I think that's the go-to father-son celebration, because that's exactly what we did in 2014 with my dad. But yeah, that 2002 season, especially like you're talking about the national title game, that play is one of the most iconic plays in Ohio State history, at least modern day Ohio State history, especially who Maurice Clarett took that ball from. It's Sean Taylor goes on to an unbelievable career in the NFL. And for looking back at that game, it's so long ago, but I forgot how much Craig Krenzel ran in that game. I looked back at the box score. I was like, holy cow, he ran that much. And did you remember Maurice Clarett? And the only time Jim Tressel probably wasn't conservative that season was that interception where Maurice Clarett made that iconic play to go play action there when he typically would run that ball. But it all worked out. And I remember that flag vividly. I remember as a little kid thinking we lost and throwing a little temper tantrum, and hearing my dad be like, oh, it's not over. It's not over. So it's good memories. It'll be fun to see those guys. I don't know what really any of them do now, but it'll be fun to see that 2002 team back in the stadium.
And to Ryan Day's point, he told us yesterday, he's like, you remember watching some of those games growing up? Like, that's you now. And they're the next couple generations of Buckeye players, just like you, Cade Stover, idolized James Laurinaitis. I realize that's a couple years after the national title team, but just like you idolize those guys, you are the guys now that kids are watching that are going to say, I want to be fill in the blank player. I want to be Jack Sawyer, who makes the big sack. I want to be CJ Stroud, who throws an incredible touchdown to win a game. You've got an incredible opportunity now, and you don't want to make the moment bigger than it is, but you're living in what you dreamed about, and recognize that and go embrace it and run with it. So especially for the high-level recruits, of which there's going to be a bunch, I just think it's really important for Ohio State to go out and make a huge impression, because let's play it from the positive side here. If they blow out Notre Dame, I mean, the lasting impression that makes with the 2024, 2025 kids is, hey, I know that other team was up by a country, and by the way, we fixed our defense, and we're here to win a national championship, and this is where you want to play your college football. And if you lose, Mark Pantoni and his staff have to work that much harder to keep convincing kids, hey, sometimes you lose a game, and we still think we're the best place for your future.
Sure thing. It's a lot riding on Saturday.
All right. Couple of other little things that I touch on before we wrap up here. One, I saw this in Notre Dame's game notes. So Tyler Buckner, obviously, it was made. This is his first career start. Notre Dame has had a few quarterbacks over the years that have performed pretty well in their first starts. In fact, if you go back to like 2010, their most recent quarterbacks have basically all won their first career starts. Even Tommy Rees against a 15th ranked Utah team back in 2010. But even like long-term, back in there were a couple of examples in the 90s, one in the 80s, couple in the 60s, guys who were making their first career starts against ranked teams, and all of them seem to perform fairly well. And in every case that they listed here, they won those games. But no player in Notre Dame history has ever started his first career game against a team ranked as highly as Ohio State is in the Associated Poll Press era. I said that backward. Associated Press poll era. College football to me is fun because you've got all of these like long-standing examples of what happened when fill in the blank was the case. But I think the reality is the beauty of this sport is that it almost doesn't matter because you're flipping your roster every year. It's a new team. It's the insanity of college football. You're trying to build something that is going to change year after year after year. So, I don't know that you think so much about the history when you're talking about a new kid. I just think about it more from an experience level. It's going to be a really, really fun, loud, hostile environment. You got a quarterback who is super highly recruited. Can Buckner, can he find a way to frustrate Ohio State's defense enough? I don't know that we know the answer, but I think, if he can be mobile and if they can run the football effectively and shorten the game, that's their best chance.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, he was highly recruited, good with his feet. So I think that's probably what they're going to lean on. Young quarterback, hostile environment Saturday night. Probably going to go through one or two reads and take off because he's worried about somebody's going to rip his head off. So it's going to be what I think it's going to be what he can do with his feet. One of the interesting things looking through Notre Dame's game notes was the amount of sacks they had last year. They only graduated 6 of those. So that's something I'll be keeping my eye on is how their defensive line is going up against our offensive line. By all accounts, it's our offensive line supposed to be one of the strengths of this team. So we'll see because they're going to go up against a really good front Saturday. So I'm excited to see how that pans out. And then Notre Dame, you could argue that Michael Mayer may have the brightest future of anybody.
Yeah, he's a dude.
Playing at Ohio State on Saturday night. I mean, he's going to be a first-round pick, probably a really high first-round pick. And it sounds like Notre Dame's going to try to get him the ball a lot and maybe break the all-time reception record this year, especially with the injuries they have so far. He's going to be getting all the targets. So,
yeah, and that's the thing. I look at Notre Dame's offense right now, and I just see a lot of unproven potential. I think they're going to be a really good team. I think they're going to win 9-10 games this year. I don't expect them to stink. I think they may struggle a little bit against Ohio State. I think the Buckeye defense is going to be better. I hope that it actually turns out that way. But from the few practices that we were allowed to see as media members and from everything we're hearing from people that are there every day, how much of it is manufactured, how much of it is just you believe in yourself as a team. It's kind of hard to decipher some of that stuff. But you can reasonably think why a lot of these guys would take good steps forward this year. So I expect Ohio State's defense to play better. And certainly when it's the first game of the year, you're not going to be lacking toughness, or at least you sure shouldn't be. And Ryan Day said, this team's, they've got a lot to prove, and he's not out here to try to convince anybody that, that they're not a hungry, focused team. So I expect Notre Dame's offense at times to look a little clunky because I think they're going to try to establish the run. And I think Ohio State, based on what we saw from Jim Knowles at Oklahoma State and how unbelievably aggressive that defense was, he's got, no offense to the Cowboys, who were pretty good last year, he's got better players who he said pick things up faster here. I don't know why you would expect anything other than a really fast, aggressive-minded defense. And I think that could be tough for a team that wants to try to establish the run.
That defense is going to be interesting to see who Jim Knowles uses in that kind of rover position that he keeps talking about. So he's got options there for sure. That's going to be how he uses that is one of the, not so much who plays that position, but how they use that is I'm looking forward to seeing that. Hey, on this set, there's 4 down linemen. Now there's 3. One guy's walking around the line. That kind of thing is going to be exciting to see.
Yeah. All right. That'll wrap up this morning's show. Went a little bit longer than we usually do, but I'm so excited about this team and this season. Sometimes that'll happen. It's going to be a lot of fun. Kickoff is set for, I think by the time all of the pregame stuff is done, it should be probably a little closer to 7:45 than actually 7:30. But the Buckeyes are asking everybody to be in their seats by 7 o'clock so you don't miss any of the fun pregame festivities that they've got planned down at the Shoe. For Craig Hyson, I'm Brendan Gulick. Thanks for tuning into Buckeye Breakdown as always. You can find it on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our pods. We'll also have a Buckeye report coming up later tonight after we talk with a number of players. That'll be available tonight after practice. So we should have the Buckeye Report posted sometime. I'm going to bet right around 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then tomorrow, Ryan Day will have his radio show. We'll basically have Ryan Day talking with Paul Keels and Jim Lachey for about an hour. You're going to hear a lot of content from Ryan as he gets ready to lead this team into the 2022 season. Buckeyes Now on SI, all of our social channels, BuckeyesNow.com, the best place for all the latest on the team. We'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us on Buckeye Breakdown. 3 days, Ohio State, Notre Dame, just around the corner here.
3 days. Can't wait.